She had purchased a first-class ticket, checked in properly, arrived on time, dressed professionally and respectfully. But with just a single glance from the gate agent, everything suddenly changed. A simple question was asked, yet it carried the weight of prejudice. "Are you sure you're in the right line?" And from that moment, they didn't just dismiss her presence. They unknowingly triggered a chain reaction that would force a major airline to confront the biggest trust crisis in its history. She didn't scream, didn't respond with anger. She simply pulled out her phone and called the right person. This is the story of Celina Moore, a 42-year-old woman of color who turned a moment of insult into a turning point that reshaped an entire industry. And if you've ever been judged by a first glance, if you've ever had to stay silent to keep the peace, then this is a story you won't want to miss. "I need to see your ticket again." The man's voice was steady, not loud, but firm enough to interrupt Celina Moore's thoughts. She had just finished texting her assistant to confirm the meeting schedule in San Diego, while her other hand gently pulled her carry-on toward the first-class boarding area. She looked up, offered a polite smile, and handed over the boarding pass that had already been scanned minutes earlier at the check-in counter. "Here you go." The employee, his name tag read Chad, glanced at the boarding pass, just for a second, but long enough for his eyes to scan further, from her neatly styled curls, to her polished leather shoes, to her unmistakably brown skin. "I'll need to see your ID as well," he added. Celina tilted her head slightly, not reacting harshly. She reached into her handbag, pulled out her driver's license, and handed it over, her smile unchanged. Of course. At that moment, Denver Airport's boarding area was still relatively quiet. Ahead of her, a young Asian businessman had already entered the gate. Behind her, a white man in khaki shorts and a hoodie held a latte in one hand, eyes glued to his iPad. Everything had gone smoothly until now. TSA pre-check, no checked luggage. Even the check-in agent earlier had complimented her on choosing a window seat. Smart move for a long flight. She was always well prepared, always thinking a few steps ahead, but the one thing she could never fully anticipate was a look like Chad's. Not curiosity, not admiration, but calculation, scrutiny. "You're sure this is the priority first-class line?" Chad asked again, this time slower, deliberately. Celina offered a thin smile, just enough, not more. "Quite sure. Seat 2A. Chad tapped a few keys on the screen, but instead of confirming her boarding, he turned to the man behind her. "Good morning, sir. We've started boarding. Go right ahead." The man nodded, didn't have to show his ticket or ID. Chad didn't ask. Celina watched him walk through the gate. Her chest tightened. She turned back to Chad. "What's going on here?" Chad avoided eye contact. "Looks like there's been a seat reassignment. I'll need you to step aside while we sort it out." His tone had shifted, no longer polite. It carried the weight of authority, as if her very presence was now a disruption. Celina didn't respond. She had learned long ago that the wrong reaction, just one wrong second, could spiral everything out of control. A woman of color reacting too strongly at an airport. One look, one whispered word, and someone might hit the security button. She stepped aside and calmly took out her phone. Not to call, not yet. Just to feel something familiar. The sensation of being ready. She had once taken a deep breath before walking into a boardroom where an investor had questioned whether she understood the tech her company was built on. She had once stayed composed when someone asked if she was someone's assistant. Today was no different. Same deep breath. But this time, she wasn't tired, she was ready. Because what this boarding gate employee didn't know was that the woman he was double-checking wasn't just a first-class passenger. She was someone who could force their entire system to undergo a full audit, and this time she wasn't staying silent. "May I speak to a supervisor?" Celina asked, her voice still gentle as a breeze, but her gaze had shifted from polite to razor-sharp. Chad sighed, his expression tinged with annoyance, as if she had just asked him to climb a mountain. He turned away, quietly radioed something into his earpiece, and disappeared behind the employee-only door. Celina remained still, phone in hand, eyes calmly following every movement at the boarding counter. A few passengers looked over at her, not because she was causing a scene, she hadn't made a sound, but because her silence was the loudest thing in that quiet terminal. Some shook their heads, others looked away. No one spoke. As usual. 5 minutes later, a woman emerged from behind the counter. Uniformed blazer, silver name tag, Kendra Miles supervisor. She approached with a faint smile, the kind used to apologize, without actually feeling sorry. "Good morning," Kendra said, her tone sweet but not warm. "I was informed there was some misunderstanding about your seat." Celina didn't let that smile distract her. "There's no misunderstanding," she replied. "I booked seat 2A last week. I checked in online, have my boarding pass, and provided my ID. Just now that seat was reassigned to someone else with no explanation. I'd like to know why." Kendra looked at her screen, typed a few keys, and her brows furrowed slightly. "Yes, the system does show seat 2A assigned to Ms. Celina Moore, but it appears there was a last-minute change." "A change?" Celina repeated. "By whom? And for what reason?" Kendra hesitated. Chad lingered behind her, avoiding eye contact. "Sometimes we need to rearrange seating for operational reasons. It could be related to priority passengers or security." Celina tilted her head, her voice lowering, not tense, just laser-focused. "The man who was just invited to board ahead of me wasn't asked for his ticket or ID. I, on the other hand, was checked twice, asked to step aside, and am now being told my seat was automatically reassigned with no explanation. If this was about security, why wasn't it clearly communicated from the start?" Kendra went silent. The excuses forming behind her lips were swallowed whole. Celina didn't raise her voice. She didn't insult anyone. But the clarity, precision, and absolute control in her words made the entire boarding counter feel stifling. "We can offer you a seat in Economy Plus, along with a travel voucher," Kendra finally said, her voice noticeably quieter. Celina let out a laugh, not joyful, but dry, layered with the kind of disappointment one grows far too used to. "A travel voucher?" she asked. "What for? To compensate for being doubted, humiliated, and treated like I don't belong in a space I paid to be in?" Kendra didn't respond. Celina took a step back, pulled out her phone, and dialed a familiar number. When the voice on the other end picked up, she lowered her voice slightly. "Daniel, it's me. I need you to review our current contract with Transwestern Air. What's their legal name in our files? Red Arrow Aviation, right? Check the clauses related to passenger conduct. And alert legal, we're going to need an emergency meeting tonight." She ended the call and turned back to face Kendra and Chad, now standing close, like a pair of accomplices caught in the act. "I'll wait right here, and I don't want a voucher. I want an explanation for myself and for the corporate policy of the company I represent." She didn't shout. She didn't cause a scene. But the way she stood there, calm, steady, eyes like steel, left no one with the courage to ask her to leave. And what they didn't yet realize was that the phone she held wasn't just for calling. It was the key to a door that led to an audit none of them saw coming. The plane took off not long after, carrying the passenger now seated in 2A Celina Moore's seat straight to San Jose. No one apologized. No explanation was given. There was no announcement over the loudspeaker, no eyes looking back at her once the decision was made. Celina remained in the waiting area of Franklin Heights Airport, sitting by the large glass window facing the runway, eyes tracking the plane as it grew smaller in the distance. She didn't cry. She wasn't angry. But she wasn't silent this time either. Her laptop opened. Her fingers moved with precision, navigating through the secure internal portal of Equitas Analytics, the company she had built from the ground up. Celina didn't need time to gather documents. She had lived her entire career ready for moments like this. 15 minutes later, a Zoom call opened with three familiar faces. Jonas, chief legal officer who had handled discrimination lawsuits for Fortune 500 partners. Maya, chief operating officer, a former mentee of Celina's, now the person overseeing every systems audit contract. Leo, head of engineering with direct access to internal evaluation portals of every company Celina had compliance agreements with. Celina didn't need to introduce herself. Her voice was firm. Red Arrow Aviation. They just committed a serious breach of service protocol toward a priority customer, with clear indicators of racial and appearance-based discrimination. My 2A seat was reassigned without reason. I requested clarification. None was given. And I recorded the entire incident. Maya frowned. Red Arrow is under our DEI audit agreement, right? They're part of Transwestern Air Holdings. Correct, Jonas confirmed. Their comprehensive audit was scheduled for next quarter. Celina shook her head. We're not waiting. Leo, I need all complaint log data from the past 12 months. Focus on boarding gate interactions. Use the behavior pattern recognition algorithm we updated last week. Search for tagged phrases. Are you sure? Can I see your ID again? Or any similar situations? Leo nodded, his eyes locked on his keyboard. Jonas, comb through the contract, especially Clause 5.3 regarding maintaining a discrimination-free public service environment. If they've breached it, we send the preliminary report within 24 hours. Maya jumped in. We notify before publishing, right? Correct, Celina said. We don't act on emotion. Everything will be backed by data, contractual terms, and recorded evidence. She leaned back slightly in her chair, her breath now steady. Gone were the belittling stares from the gate agent. Gone were the silent doubts over whether she really belonged in that seat. Now, she was right where she always belonged, at the strategic roundtable, where data spoke the truths people often tried to ignore. The meeting ended. Jonas and Maya logged off to initiate internal procedures. Leo remained on the call, his screen filled with complaint log entries. Celina, he said, I just found 11 identical cases, same airport, same route. Most of the passengers were people of color or modestly dressed. She nodded, unsurprised. Tag it, encrypt the dataset, and prepare a preliminary report for Transwestern Holdings. We don't need to make war. We just need them to see what they've been pretending not to. Leo smiled, not out of joy, but because he knew the storm had begun. Celina closed her laptop, sitting quietly in the soft glow of late afternoon sunlight filtering through the airport windows. No one remembered the woman who'd been asked to step aside just hours earlier, but she remembered. And this time, she wouldn't walk away. The next morning, the atmosphere at the main office of Equitas Analytics in San Francisco's financial district felt different. Employees walked in with hot coffee in hand, but everyone could sense a quiet momentum, as if something significant was unfolding behind the scenes. On the 15th floor, Celina Moore had been present since before sunrise. She sat in the glass-walled conference room, her natural curls neatly pinned up, flipping through the thick file Jonas, the chief legal officer, had left on the table. Each internal complaint was clearly printed, complete with timestamps, flight numbers, and passenger accounts. They asked me 3 times if I was in the right priority line. I was asked for ID twice, while the white man behind me wasn't asked anything. Celina wasn't surprised, but this time she felt something deeper, both personal and systemic. This was no longer a neutral checklist. This was a response to every time someone had said, "Please step aside." Maya entered, carrying an iPad. We've compiled 19 incidents over the past 12 months at airports operated by Transwestern Holdings. 7 of them occurred at Red Arrow Gates in Franklin Heights Airport. All show a pattern of silent discrimination. Celina nodded, her gaze sharp. I want the preliminary report delivered to the Executive Board of Transwestern Holdings by 3 p.m. today. Send both a hard copy via express courier and a digital version with a secure tracking code. Jonas added, We're in a position of strength. They signed a contract agreeing to periodic and comprehensive reviews. If they resist, it's a breach. If they stay silent, we have the right to escalate to an independent audit. Celina folded her arms and leaned back. And the press? Maya shook her head. Nothing has leaked, but a video started circulating last night. No captions, no edits. A woman being stopped at a boarding gate. Her face isn't clearly visible, but people are beginning to recognize the story. Celina didn't ask further. She simply murmured, "Thank you" to whoever captured that moment. By early afternoon, Equitas's report was sent out. No flowery language, no accusatory rhetoric, just data, documentation, and analytical graphs. At the bottom of each page was Celina's official seal, a formal acknowledgement that, this time, she was standing forward in her full authority. A few hours later, the internal phone rang. Jonas picked up, nodded, and handed it to Celina. Mr. Martinson, Chief Legal Officer of Transwestern Holdings. Celina brought the phone to her ear. Celina Moore speaking. Ms. Moore, the voice on the other end was tense. We just received your company's materials. I think there may have been some misunderstanding here. Celina cut in, gently but firmly. This is not a misunderstanding. This is a system that's grown used to never being challenged. Martinson tried to remain composed. We would like to request an emergency meeting with Equitas representatives within the next 24 hours. Celina paused for a beat, then said, Tomorrow morning, 9 a.m. via Zoom. I'll send the link. She hung up. There was no gloating in her expression, only focus. This battle wasn't for personal vindication. It was to force a system to face itself. As Celina stood, Maya looked at her, hesitating. Do you think this time will be different? Celina didn't smile, but her eyes lit up. This time they don't just have to apologize, they have to fix it. Less than 12 hours after the call from the Chief Legal Officer of Transwestern Holdings, the storm began to spread. A short video clip showing Celina Moore being asked twice for her ticket and ID at the priority gate of Franklin Heights Airport was shared from an anonymous account. No captions, no edits, just raw footage accurately depicting what happened. A black woman in professional attire being scrutinized simply for standing where she had paid to stand. At first, the video circulated quietly within communities of black professionals and equality rights advocates. But like a spark catching dry grass, social media erupted. The hashtag #HowRightToBoard quickly trended on Twitter, then spilled over to LinkedIn, Instagram, and even TikTok. No one knew who the woman in the video was, but everyone knew that feeling. The suspicious glance, the polite yet pointed questions, the technical mix-up, repeated so often, it becomes an invisible system of exclusion. And then, overnight, the internet found her name, Celina Moore. A month-old LinkedIn post by her on unspoken bias in customer service resurfaced, and thousands of comments flooded in beneath what had seemed like a routine reflection. "We see you. You are not alone. Thank you for not staying silent." At the headquarters of Transwestern Holdings, emergency meetings were held back-to-back. The internal communications team scrambled to draft a press release. Their legal department debated every word. "We apologize, but we do not admit to discrimination. No, if we don't use the right language, we'll be seen as evasive." Before they could release anything, an internal email was leaked. It was a memo from the previous year, written by a regional manager, warning that several staff members at Franklin Heights Airport had shown a pattern of inconsistent ID checks based on race. The note included the line, "Retraining needed to avoid misunderstandings related to perceived discrimination." But nothing had been done, no follow-up. The truth was now plain to see. That morning, Equitas Analytics posted a short statement on its homepage. "We are not hunting anyone. We simply measure the truth. And the truth is speaking louder than any excuse. No embellishment, no hashtag." But almost immediately, major media outlets like the New York Times, Bloomberg, and CNN Business began publishing in-depth analysis of the incident. The headlines were stark but powerful. A CEO denied her seat and the systems that serve silence. Celina remained silent to the press. She declined all interviews. She didn't need airtime to earn sympathy. She let the data speak for itself. At the Equitas office, data analysts worked nonstop. Maya sent out an email to 32 current clients using the internal culture audit service. Within an hour, 14 companies responded requesting to upgrade their audit packages. "We don't want to become the next Transwestern," wrote one bluntly honest HR director. Celina sat in her office, looking out at the city through the glass wall. She knew that silence could be a tool, but purposeful stillness was even more powerful. No need to slam fists or raise voices, just stand firm. A message lit up on her phone, from an unknown sender. Just 2 words. "Thank you." She didn't know who sent it. Maybe it was a passenger once pulled aside at a gate. Maybe it was an airport staffer who had seen something and said nothing. But she knew one thing for sure. That was the reason she kept going. The next morning, at exactly 9 a.m. Pacific Time, the virtual meeting between Equitas Analytics and the executive board of Transwestern Holdings officially began. Celina Moore appeared on screen with her signature calm composure, a plain white blouse with no logos, her hair neatly tied up, and a backdrop of natural light streaming through the glass walls of her Oakland office. No cold expression, no fake friendliness, just the quiet confidence of someone who's long mastered the art of turning invisible wounds into concrete action. On the other end, Robert Langley, the deputy CEO of Transwestern, opened the meeting. He appeared to be in his 50s, his voice laced with polite awkwardness and veiled defensiveness. "First of all, Ms. Moore, we want to extend our deepest apologies for the unfortunate experience you had at the boarding gate last week. That is absolutely not the image Transwestern aims to represent." Celina didn't rush to respond. She nodded slightly, as if she'd heard the same sentence hundreds of times before. "I understand, but an apology is not why I'm here." Robert paused, then motioned toward the legal team beside him. A woman named Linda Shepard, head of human resources, jumped in. "We would be open to inviting you to participate in an internal dialogue session to help us build solutions for the future. Perhaps a workshop or a speaker series on diversity and equity in customer service." Celina cut her off, not rudely but firmly. "I'm not a motivational speaker. I don't do workshops so you can post photos with the hashtag #WeCare. She looked directly into the camera. I'm here because my company has identified at least 19 incidents in the past 12 months at boarding gates in Minneapolis, Phoenix, and Seattle, all with the same pattern. In 7 of those cases, your employees use the exact phrase, "Are you sure you're in the right line?" The room on the other end fell silent. The friendliness vanished. Faces tightened like strings pulled too hard. Celina continued, placing her hand on a thick report folder. "We're not asking for an apology, we're asking for action. And since Transwestern signed an internal audit agreement with Equitas last quarter, the clause allowing a comprehensive audit is now in effect, as of today." Linda frowned. "An audit right now could impact our stock value and employee morale." Celina gave a faint smile. "Then maybe that's exactly what's needed." Robert sighed, speaking now as if negotiating a cable contract. "We could propose a delay to the audit in exchange for a financial contribution to Equitas's equity initiative, or perhaps a joint campaign." Celina didn't blink. "I don't sell silence." Next to her, Jude, Equitas's chief legal officer, nodded in confirmation. "We've sent formal notice of the audit's commencement. The rights to the analytical content belong to Equitas. If you intend to delay, I suggest you consult your legal team first." A long pause blanketed the meeting. Robert turned to someone off camera, whispering something inaudible. Finally, he spoke slowly. "Very well. We'll cooperate, but we hope for a fair chance to rebuild our image." Celina tilted her head slightly. "Equity isn't a chance, it's a responsibility, and you're long overdue." She ended the meeting by clicking leave, without waiting for any parting words. On the other side of the screen, the senior executives sat in stunned silence, not just because Celina had been resolute, but because they had just come face to face with their greatest fear, a black woman holding the data and unwilling to forgive through silence. That evening, as the city lights of San Francisco began to flicker through the thick glass walls of the Equitas Analytics office, Celina Moore sat alone at her desk. The glow from the screen reflected off her tilted cheek, while her phone buzzed repeatedly with new notifications. But Celina didn't open any social media apps. She already knew what was happening. Jude had warned her right after the morning meeting. The boarding gate video had been leaked. In less than 12 hours, Twitter and LinkedIn were flooded with the hashtag #SeatForCelina. Not because she had posted it herself, but because a passenger at the opposite gate had recorded the entire incident, from the suspicious glance of the airline staff to the moment Celina was quietly asked to step aside. The video had no slow motion, no filters, just the raw image of a black woman being asked, again and again, if she was in the right place. "Once again," one user wrote, "we see how politeness can become a weapon when used to deny a person's rightful place." But what was even more surprising were the stories that followed. Thousands began sharing their own experiences, from suspicious glances at check-in counters to being denied priority boarding because they didn't look like first class. One user wrote, "I'm a lawyer and was asked for extra verification because the ticket had my name, so did the passport. Both were me." A single mother shared, "Because I wore jeans, they told me I had to give up my seat for a pre-booked guest." While Transwestern's PR team scrambled through emergency meetings in closed rooms, out there, the community had already spoken. But what caught Celina's attention wasn't the outrage, it was the empathy. People weren't angry because her story was exceptional. They were moved because it was familiar. At the Equitas office, Ava, the chief operating officer, walked in with a hastily printed report in hand. "You should see this," Ava said, handing over the paper. The header read in bold, "Top trending topics. United States past 24 hours. Seat for Celina. Boarding, while black. Equitas audit." "This isn't just your story anymore," Ava said quietly. "It's become a symbol." Celina looked at the chart and stayed silent for a few seconds. "We never try to create symbols, we just do the work." Ava nodded. "Right. But this time, our work is the light exposing the whole system." At the same time, over at Transwestern's headquarters in Dallas, internal departments were in chaos like the eye of a storm. 3 divisions, legal, HR, and communications, were locked in meetings all night. The airline's acting CEO received letters from more than 40 strategic shareholders demanding a comprehensive explanation on the company's response to the customer trust crisis. "This isn't just about a seat," one major shareholder wrote. "It's about how the system treats people and how the company responds when the system is exposed." Under social media posts, people shared images of Celina sitting quietly with her phone, or the clip where she softly said, "I'll wait here, but I'm not going anywhere." No angry words, no slammed fists, just quiet resolve but impossible to ignore. By the end of the day, as Celina shut her laptop, she received a message from an unknown number. No introduction, no emojis, just one simple line. I'm a former employee. I saw what they did to people like you. Thank you for not staying silent. Celina set her phone down without replying. She didn't need to, because this time, she wasn't alone. Monday morning, the atmosphere at Transwestern Airlines headquarters in Dallas was as heavy as lead. Though the glass corridors still gleamed and the walls remained decorated with slogans like "Fly with Trust" and "The customer is central," the silence inside the meeting rooms reflected a storm quietly brewing. Interim CEO Lawrence Bennett strode quickly into the 18th floor conference room, which the legal and communications teams had transformed into an emergency response center. On the large screen at the front of the room, red letters displayed, "Crisis meeting, hash and seat for Celina." A communications advisor spoke first. "We need to release an official statement today. If not, we'll lose control of the narrative." The head of legal cut in. "The statement must be carefully worded. If we use the term discrimination, we could face civil lawsuits and potentially a federal investigation." Lawrence furrowed his brow and turned to HR. "What's the internal situation?" The HR director presented a chart. "We've received at least 17 anonymous emails from employees confirming that issues with black passengers at the gate aren't isolated incidents. Some even named 2 staff members who've been previously reported, including Nick." "And what did we do with those complaints back then?" Lawrence asked, his voice lowering. The room fell silent. Only the sound of papers rustling could be heard as an assistant searched through the files. Meanwhile, at the Equitas Analytics office in Oakland, Celina Moore was meeting with Ava and Jude in the strategy room. On the wall were timelines mapping out repeated discriminatory behaviors across airports managed by Transwestern, from Minneapolis to Denver, from Chicago to Atlanta. "They all share the same pattern," Ava said, pointing to the data board. "The same questions, the same tone, and most of them never received a formal response after filing complaints." Jude nodded. "They built a culture where bias became default, and now that system is being exposed." Celina looked at the map of incidents displayed on the screen, red, yellow, orange dots, each color representing a different level of severity. It wasn't just Minneapolis. This was a repeated pattern of broken structure, not individual error. That afternoon, an email titled "Temporary Suspension Notice" was sent to all Transwestern staff. It read, "2 employees at Fremont Bay Airport, including Nick M. and Carrie T., are being placed on temporary leave to support an internal investigation. We are committed to maintaining a service environment rooted in respect, fairness, and transparency." Less than an hour later, the news spread. CNN and Bloomberg both reported, "Transwestern Airlines faces internal culture crisis after viral video." A new hashtag emerged, "Accountability in the air." And while public pressure mounted, Celina remained silent. No interviews, no public appearances, no emotional statements, just action. Ava then received a call from a Transwestern board member not to apologize, but to request a full-scale audit. "We need a cultural audit," the executive said. "From training systems to complaint response policies, from how we hire staff to how we measure service performance." Ava took notes carefully, then looked up at Celina. "What should I tell them?" Celina offered a faint smile. "Tell them we're ready, but this time we're not fixing it for them. They'll fix it with us." From a single denied seat, an entire system had begun to shake, and this was just the beginning. Tuesday afternoon, the headquarters of Equitas Analytics was unusually busy. Laptops had been running since early morning, data dashboards refreshed constantly on the large analysis room screens. But amidst the urgency, Celina Moore remained unusually calm. Not because she didn't grasp the gravity of the situation, but because she had prepared for this moment her entire life. On her desk sat a full report sent to the board of Transwestern Airlines, a nearly 80-page document filled with indisputable numbers. Racial discrepancies in ID checks, unexplained last-minute seat changes, and customer complaints that had been ignored in the internal system. She didn't need to say much. The data spoke for itself. Jude walked in holding a printed translation of a recently leaked internal email from Transwestern. The head of operations admitted that employees sometimes react based on appearances rather than procedures. They're trying to downplay the issue. Celina read it once and set it down. They're trying to shift the blame from the system to individuals, but it's the system that enabled this to happen over and over again. Ava entered through the side door, iPad in hand. NBC wants to interview you tonight. CNN just sent a request too. Celina shook her head. No. If I speak now, they'll turn this into a story about Celina being offended. But this isn't personal. This is about the thousands who've been treated the same way I was simply because they didn't fit someone else's internal expectation. That evening, while the media buzzed with coverage, Celina held a closed-door meeting with her senior team at Equitas. No projector, no slides, just her, standing in a circle of close colleagues. "We cannot allow this to end with a simple apology," she began, voice soft but clear. "Our silence in the smallest moments, the suspicious looks, the 'are you sure you're in the right seat?' the doubtful tone, that's what lets systems like this persist." A young staff member to her left, Malcolm, spoke up. "I've been asked 3 times in a week if I'm an intern, even though I'm the lead engineer on the project." Celina looked at him, her gaze softening. "And what did you do?" "I smiled," Malcolm said quietly, "and went back to work. But now I realize, maybe I should have said something." Celina nodded. Smiling was a wise choice, but silence, forever, is no longer an option. She paused, then continued. "We're at a point where small actions, an email, an audit request, a quiet refusal can change the culture, but only if we're willing to be accountable not just to our roles but to our values." At that same moment, over at Transwestern's headquarters, a team of crisis consultants was finalizing an emergency response strategy. In the risk analysis report, one red highlighted sentence stood out. "Failure to fully cooperate with Equitas significantly increases the risk of losing federal contracts." Something unprecedented was happening. Decision makers within the organization were now forced to listen, not because they wanted to, but because they had no other choice. The next morning, Celina stepped out of the elevator at the office holding a single memo in her hand. At the top were 3 simple words: redefining power. Beneath that was a new framework for assessing fairness in customer service, a proposal not just for Transwestern, but one Equitas was preparing for all future corporate partners. She didn't need to shout. She didn't need to go on TV. She didn't need to get angry. Because Celina Moore had just shown an entire system that real power doesn't come from raising your voice, it comes from refusing to step back and having the courage to speak what others have long kept silent. 3 days later, the headquarters of Transwestern Airlines in Dallas became the epicenter of a media storm they could no longer contain. On the 28th floor, in a glass-walled conference room overlooking a gray sky, the airline's board of directors sat in heavy silence across from each other. At the far end of the room, on a large screen, the title of the report sent by Equitas Analytics was displayed: "A pattern of systemic discrimination at passenger touchpoints." No fiery accusations, no harsh words. But it was the precision, the cold clarity of each statistic, each chart that exerted more pressure than any speech ever could. Security footage stills, buried emails, testimonies from passengers whose complaints were ignored, all carefully compiled into a 67-page PDF report. Celina was not present at the meeting. She didn't need to be. Instead, she was sitting in a modest room at Equitas's Oakland office, surrounded by a young team of data engineers, reviewing audit requests from 3 other regional airlines, smaller companies that had proactively reached out after news of the incident spread. One of the team members, Tasha, turned to her quietly. "What do you think they'll do? Transwestern, I mean?" Celina didn't look up from her screen. She simply said, "They'll respond, but what they do depends on whether they truly want change or just want to calm the public." Tasha nodded, still staring at the lines of code running on her screen. "It's the first time I've seen a company like that be forced to listen. And no one even had to shout." Celina smiled gently. Because sometimes, what forces change isn't volume, it's irrefutable evidence. That afternoon, Transwestern officially released a press statement. "We are committed to fully cooperating with the independent audit by Equitas Analytics in order to improve our service policies and ensure every passenger is treated with fairness and respect." For the first time, they used the correct word: discrimination. Celina read the statement on her screen. She didn't smile, didn't celebrate. She simply gave a small nod as if a long overdue step had finally been taken. A week later, Celina was invited to speak at a closed conference of HR and operations executives from the aviation and financial industries. She stepped onto the stage in a simple outfit: a white blouse, black slacks, her hair neatly tied back. No accessories, no gimmicks, just her voice, steady, clear, and direct. What happened to me at the airport was simply a public version of what so many others have experienced in silence. But that silence was never consent. It was just a way to survive in a system that doesn't accept your voice. She paused. The entire room held its breath. But we're not silent anymore. And if those of you sitting here today want to stand on the side of change, then it's time to stop saying, "We're sorry," and start asking, "What will we do next?" Applause broke out loud, sustained, and resonant. Not because Celina was a victim, but because she had transformed, from someone denied a seat to someone redefining the standard. That evening, back at the office, Celina stayed late, as usual. On her desk was a handwritten letter. She opened it. It was from an elderly passenger who had witnessed the incident at the airport. He wrote, "I didn't know your name at the time, but I knew one thing since that day. I've stopped staying silent when I see others being treated unfairly." Celina finished reading, folded the letter, and placed it in her drawer. No need for further words, because she knew systems don't change themselves, but those who dare not to step back will force them to move forward, and that is real power. Celina Moore didn't board that flight that day, but she traveled farther than any first-class seat could ever take her. She didn't have to shout to be heard. She only needed the truth and unwavering resolve. She didn't retaliate. She let the data do that. And in silence, she forced an entire corporation to look itself in the mirror. This is not just a story about discrimination. It's a reminder that when you have a voice, use it. When you have evidence, present it. And when you have power, use it to open the door for others to walk through. Because sometimes the greatest resistance isn't a scream, but the right silence and the right action. If this story speaks to you, leave a comment with the words, "I deserve better," because you truly do deserve respect, to be heard, and to be treated with fairness. Don't forget to like, share this video with someone who needs a reminder that they are not alone, and hit follow to never miss more powerful stories like this every day.